GM Farcaster. It is Tuesday, December 3rd, and you are here with Nounish Prophet Adrian and a very special guest, DWR, Dan Romero, co-founder of Farcaster. Thanks for joining us here today, Dan. We appreciate you coming by.
Thanks for having me.
There's so much happening, and we are now live on Twitter and on, I call it Twitter. I will not call it X. And on YouTube. You can also join us in our StreamYard studio. So we're excited to have everybody here. And I feel like we've got to start with the question that, because of all the AI token craziness right now, the question that I literally saw yet again, in a group chat today: will there be a Farcaster token? Can you just answer that first before we dive into all the other things?
Yeah, so my usual response on Farcaster
he said, yeah,
is what would the token do? And I actually think that's an important question. Because like just launching a token, what like number go up? Like that's the point. Okay, but what happens when number goes down? Like that. So I think starting from first principles, build a social network that's on top of this protocol that actually has a lot of daily active users that are retained and is growing and is attractive as a platform for developers to build on top of. Then you actually start to have something that's valuable. And if you have something that's valuable and you want it to be decentralized, there are probably ways to effectively do that using blockchains. Like we have a bunch of examples of that. So I think you have to like actually get the order of operations right. And I think I've been in crypto 10 years. A lot of people just run to doing a token when like they haven't even built anything. And so it's like a promise of building in the future. And it'd be like the equivalent of going public as a company before you've ever,
built anything.
And so why would you do that? All you're doing is you're creating a ton of pressure for the team, and you create expectations where yes, the number can go up because of macro, but if it comes back down over the long term because people are actually valuing it on what is the value that's long term here, you're just going to have like a total disaster and a group of people who would be really, really upset. Now you could say, hey, look, like Ripple, right? Like Ripple really hasn't shipped much. It's kind of been a meme for a decade plus now. I mean, it predates me in crypto. But at the same time, like, does anyone actually believe that just because Ripple went up 5x, in a few days
this week
or since the election, that Ripple is going to be fundamentally worth $150 billion 2 or 3 years from now? No. So I think you just have to start from first principles, build something that's actually valuable. And if there's actually something valuable, then you can actually figure out how to decentralize the kind of like economic control of the thing that's valuable. The other thing is there is upside in Farcaster. People are building audiences. They control those audiences. People are participating in all of the different on-chain experiments that developers are permissionlessly launching, right? So whether you're an individual creator and you've actually built an audience on Farcaster, attention, that's valuable. You can build a business off that. You can be an activist for some cause that you think is important. Or as a developer, whether it's, again, your audience or the distribution that comes through the feed, like that is actually valuable in and of itself. So unlike a lot of other things in crypto, Farcaster has delivered value to people without just like having to just launch an asset and then say, hey, we hope that the number goes up because of vibes. And you can take issue with that, but that's not how we're going to build Farcaster, right? Like Varun and I are pretty principled in that sense, and so it's like we actually want to build something that's valuable and durable, and that's the primary focus right now. And so what does that mean? It's increased daily active users.
That's the priority.
I appreciate. Yeah, Dan, I just appreciate how consistent you've been because, anyone who's paying attention, you say the same thing over and over again. What makes me laugh is like people don't shut up about the speculation, and it just cracks me up sometimes. Like no matter like as much as you say the same thing again and again, it keeps creeping up. And I think it comes from like one of two places. And one is this like people buy into this is Web3, Web3 social, Web3 decentralized social. We get ownership, therefore I need to be like have some sort of like financial reward, or like I'm helping build Farcaster, I need to own a piece of it. To your point, I think we're seeing people get monetary rewards and ownership without Farcaster giving a token. So I think that's fine. And then I think the other piece, though, there's just like people like to, there's still speculation about like, I don't even know. It's like, oh my God, yes, airdrop. It's like, because it's happened so much. And
well, you see the Hype Liquid airdrop, that was really interesting this week, because it mostly went to folks who were using the Hype platform, is pretty much who received that airdrop. So it was like, this is actually a token. It's kind of along the lines of exactly what you're saying. People were actually using this product, but it was like sort of a small group of people who were using this product and got huge airdrops, but they were actually, so a lot of people were kind of caught off guard, but like, oh, we didn't see this. We didn't know to farm it, and it was because it went to actual users of the product instead. So there was a lot of people like, wait, we didn't get an opportunity to farm this token. What happened? But I think it's along those same lines. And I think we've seen this with, we saw that with DGen. The people who got a DGen airdrop the first time were folks who were on Farcaster who were for a long time. So to your point also, there have been tokens. Farcaster didn't have to drop one. Merkle didn't have to drop one.
Yeah, look, and I think if I was to argue the other side, it says, hey, bud, like you're in crypto, and crypto is about tokens. Yeah. And that is the kind of distinguishing feature, the unfair advantage. It is the impulse to make money that actually has people in the space. People claim they're, reading it for the articles. This is the famous phrase, but like, right. They're in it for the tech. It's like, okay, like the reality is most people in crypto are in it for the ability to make money, which is the same reason most people are in AI and all these other things. But I think crypto just shines a light on the fact that like, because you can create money as like one of the first things, it is actually the first use case of crypto as a technology, then naturally anything that's worked is just like you create money, you create upside in terms of like ownership in the network, and that works. I think that is, there are two issues with that. So one, for the last 10 years, that's been a pretty precarious legal position in the US.
Yeah. And
so I think it's like easy for people, an anonymous account on crypto Twitter or Farcaster to be like, when token, but it's just like, okay, there's a whole bunch of legal and regulatory stuff that you have, company liability, personal liability, like not so easy just to go do that. Yeah, you might benefit from that in a quick, like you get the airdrop, you're able to sell it, but then there are longer term ramifications. I think there are reputational components to it, which I said before, where it's like you launch a token in crypto and the number go up, but then the number goes down and then it doesn't go back up again. That doesn't feel good, right? Like one of the things about taking a company public typically is that there's a strong growth story and the company has built a sustainable business model and it can keep going. Yes, you have those garbage SPACs that came out in 2021 and all there's malfeasance in any market. Right. But I think like if you're a principal person, it's just like, I want to make sure that there's actual long-term economic value before I can increase any amount of, economic obligation or burden to people. And so I think like the industry would be in a lot better place if people were a little bit more sober in terms of how they approach this kind of stuff.
And I think that's a perfect approach for sure. And I loved I love that you keep saying, what would the token do? And I actually use that. We did end up launching a token for Cast Out and through Clanker. And that was the way I launched it, was this little fake discussion between me and Adrian and her saying, what would the token do? I'm like, we're going to figure that out. But I agree from a larger perspective. It's the reason like we didn't even want to launch a fan token for GM Farcaster because we just knew that adds extra pressure. And that's a tiny version of what you're talking about. Like the attention, your attention would be completely distracted from building. It would be focused on the token and the number. So I agree with that approach for sure.
I'm glad we got the token talk out of the way.
Yeah, I just had to get that out of the way. Because
Dan, do you know what Cast Out is?
No, I don't know what it is.
He doesn't know what Cast Out is. I know.
Yeah.
It's
Cast
crazy.
Out, it's like it is our Survivor-esque Farcaster game. Like it's like
cool.
kind of like
It's
a
our
Crypto the Game.
Yeah.
Did you see my cast yesterday talking about this as an opportunity?
And I realized, and I was like,
and then I
tagged
tagged you and I
you
said,
don't
do you know
we're
where
doing
Cast
it.
Out is? Yeah, because we built,
cool.
we did a beta run
well,
of
just
this.
Just ping me afterwards. I'd love to recast it so that people are aware. But yeah, I'm very bullish on games that are, you can't let AI gets like hard to play. There's a bunch of games that you could like basically cheat with. And I think getting in a world like, chess is not really a fun game to play over the internet if you put money on it, because naturally people just use the chess computer, right? But playing a game like Werewolf or Mafia or Crypto the Game or Cast Out, my suggestion yesterday was they're kind of simplified versions of the board game, the like super nerdy board game Diplomacy, which takes 8 hours. But the point being is social dynamics are quite complex. And to the degree that you can find a game that works well enough async and you can use frames and DCs and all these Legos, I think it can be fun. And then to the degree that people choose to put money in it, right? Again, I'm not endorsing anything one thing, but the point is that the developer can permissionlessly build it, and then a group of adults can decide that they want to actually, just like they can play a game of poker, can play that kind of game. And so I think that there's something there. I think that there's another interesting trend that I just became aware of recently is apparently like, kind of the 17 to 24-year-old crowd, and maybe some people on Farcaster can tell me about this, is that there's like this like pigeonhole or pigeon games. Do you know about this?
No, but I have like children
you talking
in
about
this age group.
You talking about the text message games? Is that what you're talking about?
So they're apparently like
that all the time.
Insanely popular with young people. Like, and they just like basically play games on iMessage.
I do that with my son all the time.
Kind of like been this like platform that's existed for a decade, and everyone's just like, why is Apple mucking things up? But this like one thing is actually, it has like a decent amount of usage. And so I think that other platforms are thinking about like, how do we bring back games, which is like full circle for Facebook, right? Like, Sega and stuff like that. So I do think that there's an opportunity there with Farcaster frames, especially with V2, because there's so much more surface area and you can build a much richer application that you can incorporate crypto into it, which I think naturally kind of just makes it more interesting to a certain subsegment of people, is that you can add money to whatever game you're playing. In the same way that there are a bunch of people who like watching football, and then they like watching football while they have some money on the line, right? And fantasy football is another version of that. It's lower stakes in the scheme of things, but you're playing effectively a money game over the whole season, and it enhances your enjoyment of that activity. And so I think that there's like a whole underexplored area of just like building these lightweight but fun social experiences that nicely integrate with crypto. And I think a lot of the reason that hasn't existed thus far is building a native mobile app on iOS and Android, and then having like crypto payment flow. It gets really tricky with App Store rules. It's like, okay, how do you get people to install your thing versus the equivalent game that can kind of go across your feed, and you say, oh, this looks interesting, click. In Frames V2, you're gonna be able to install it effectively and then have notifications. You actually start to build an ongoing relationship with one of these kind of lighter weight, but you can have it be a pretty substantial app.
And this is a great segue to this. And actually what you were just talking about with Game Pigeon, there's actually one that is this, that you go back and forth. Yeah, it's Game Pigeon. Yeah, Game Pigeon. And it's very addictive. Like Game Pigeon is really fun. You just send it back and forth in a text message. And you can do similar types of games like the basketball game that's in this frame. So loved like let's pivot a little bit over to this, to Frames V2. This is one example of some of the different opportunities here. But let's chat about what you see as the benefit of the V2 version of Frames. What is it, and what is the benefit to developers as well as those who will be using the frames? Like, what will you be able to do in V2 that you couldn't do in V1? I guess is a good place to start.
Yeah, so V1 is a static image in the feed. This is kind of a bit of a hack of this open graph standard that Facebook put together. It's why you get link previews when you send a link in iMessage or WhatsApp, or post something on Twitter. Twitter used to do this. They've since in the Elon no link era has really hampered distribution of kind of like links with Open Graph. But the idea was just like, okay, let's make this interactive. Let's add the ability to like add some buttons. Like you can click a button, it can open up a new image, and so it's this kind of the like way to think about it is like the old version of movies were literally like people would take like individual images, right? Like, you know, hand drawn or whatever, and then like you put them in a carousel and you'd spin them around and make them go fast, and it would mimic motion. And then obviously you get to like film and then digital film and then video games, but like that's basically the leap that we're taking, is like we're going from this like very basic version of functionality in the feed to something that it's just like any other web page. And so the idea is like you can see something in the feed, tap one button, boom, like you can be in a totally immersive experience. One of the developers on Farcaster, Compez.eth, I think I'm saying that right, did just a demo of like, here's all this like crazy 3D stuff that you can do. And Alves, I always get the name order wrong. I think it's Alves Tiago or Tiago.eth, who kind of was an early Farcaster developer and has recently come back because I think he's no longer working as part of this like acquisition he was part of. Released this like pile of cards 3D animation for starter packs. I don't know if you guys saw that. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's like and obviously this is a little hard because we haven't finished it on web. It's like entirely, although he's made it actually work on web, which is kind of cool. But on mobile, it's just like you can kind of swipe right, swipe left for the different packs. And so I think what I'm optimistic about is we heard a lot of feedback during Frames V1 that it was a cool concept, but the like functionality was too limited for like what developers actually wanted to build. And so once the novelty kind of wore off, it's just like, okay, well, I have something that's like more substantial that I want to build, and I can't really do that in the frame. And so there have been a couple of use cases. I think like Moxie is a great example of a Farcaster native team that basically said, even with the limitations, we're going to try to build like an entire ecosystem and this very complex app in terms of functionality, all within Frame. It's really, really impressive. But to the degree that Frames V2 existed when they started that, it probably would have, you know, reduced the amount of work by 50% or, you know, 80% or something like that. The second thing that Frames V2 has that V1 sort of has, but like we're making a huge improvement here, is better transactions. And so like the kind of magic thing that we realized with Frames over the kind of course of this year is like the most interesting frames almost always have a transactional component. There are a few examples, but generally kind of having you do something and then being able to drive towards like either minting an NFT on chain, buying an asset, whatever. Cash storage is a great example. Being able to easily push into a wallet a transaction and just go from there is something that Frames V2 were like making a like an even higher priority. And so improving all the kind of like rough edges, and you know, we recently added Rainbow, which I actually think is pretty amazing. Coinbase built this thing called Mobile Wallet Protocol. We implemented it. It only worked with Coinbase Wallet for most of this year. Rainbow went and implemented it for Rainbow. And I would actually say that Rainbow's implementation is just like much faster to like go into Rainbow. And that's cool that like both companies have competing wallets, but Rainbow's implementation on top of this Coinbase protocol that we've integrated is faster. And you know, I think Coinbase is going to be improving their integration as well. But I do think
Rainbow also added claims. So Rainbow also added claims directly so like claiming for DGen, claiming for Moxie, and made it very simple too. And so they've been sort of integrating different types of Farcaster things as well.
Yeah, I would say Rainbow has been the most Farcaster aligned wallet, like from just like a set of functionality. Although I do think Coinbase Wallet is like done a bunch of stuff and is increasingly going
much
to
improved,
like the investing in the ecosystem, largely part to Jesse. So, but I think that and the MetaMask folks are actually very active on Farcaster as well. So like I think those three.
Dan launched a token with Clanker.
But I think like generally mobile UX needs to improve for transactions, because consumers, that's where they spend their time, right? And that's why Solana Blinks weren't successful. It's people spend time on their phones. They're on Twitter's app. There is no way to make a Solana Blink, which is the equivalent of a frame on Twitter, work. So if 90% of time on Twitter usage is mobile, like then Blinks don't really matter, because the power users are fine with a contract address or a deck screener link or whatever. and the casual user just sees it in their feed and wants to play the basketball game and then potentially mint something. Like that casual audience is actually far larger in the scheme of things. You have to meet them on mobile with good experience. And then the last two things, and I think I mentioned this before, is frames V2. One complaint we had with V1 is that they're too ephemeral. I spend all this time in the frame. I go viral once. I can't get people to come back to my frame. Well, in V2, we're allowing you to install it. So similar to Telegram, I think WorldCoin, World App actually has a version of this as well. So other people are kind of like doing this. Obviously, WeChat and other apps. And so the idea is like you can just add the frame, and then you'll have a quick launcher, and you'll be able to kind of like pull that frame back up. So something that you use every day, now you're like have a shortcut that's right there. And then the last part, which I think is again focused on this idea of like building a more retentive experience for developers, is the notifications component of things. And I think once that hits people, they're going to be like, oh, actually, this is way more powerful than V1, because now once I get a user to add my app, like there's a certain level of like, I actually want to interact with this app on an ongoing basis. I trust this app. Then that app has the ability to like send in-app notifications, whether that's, there's a new Clanker coin, or there, some new mint available, or price alert, or what developers are going to come up with a bunch of claim your degen or claim your Moxie. Right. Like, I think the notifications plus install will actually, in addition to all the additional functionality, will be a pretty significant upgrade for developers.
Very cool. Adrian, you had something you wanted to mention?
Just Dan, are the ability to save it and pin out, is that available today?
No, so that's end of this week, early next week. We will have that working. We're focusing on mobile first, but I think we're going to then add web, just because 15% of users are usage is on web. Our power users are on web. But I think getting
Adrian is on
V2
web.
into a complete state is an important thing. Say that again.
I said Adrian's on web. It's just for her.
It just occurred to me, how I used to complain that the web app was kind of slow and laggy and would time out?
Yep.
It kind of doesn't do it anymore.
Well, it's much better.
Slowly behind the scenes, chipping away at everything.
Yes, I see you.
There you go. Sorry, and you were that's the pinning out will come towards the end of this week, you think? And
in the next week you'll have the kind of ability to add the app. I think we might use add instead of install, because Apple doesn't like the term install. Like they don't like apps within apps. So the idea is just like you add a frame, the frame gets added to your kind of like quick launch, quick access.
Cool.
And then from there will kind of be an opt-in, but the idea is you can get in-app notifications from that frame.
So it's almost an Explore that's personalized.
Yeah, so Explore kind of goes away, because Explore, as you can imagine, probably doesn't get a ton of use today, just because it's not updated enough, and there aren't enough like apps that you'd want to go add or install, or no one's telling you, oh, go add this app on Warpcast. Like we haven't hit that point yet. But if we accomplish everything that we're hoping to with frames, you can imagine people being like, oh, this is the way to like get started with this app, like, or it's through the frame, because that actually provides this really nice experience on mobile. And then I think that there's an opportunity for us to provide like analytics for these developers in terms of like how well is their frame doing from a distribution standpoint, who's interacting with it, right? Like all the social context that I think if you just have a website, like it's a lot harder. Like, you can see the connected addresses, but there's just a lot of rich information that's available. And so I think if we kind of position this right, it's like Nanar can offer a bunch of this stuff, OpenRank can open up a bunch of this stuff for developers to really like better understand your audience on Farcaster. And I think another important thing is the audience on Farcaster, by definition, everyone has a wall. And so there's a lot more quantification you can do in terms of like, oh, like we actually have a bunch of users who've got $100,000 worth of combined assets in their wallet. Like that's a pretty valuable user relative to just like a random person visiting a webpage that you don't necessarily have insight over.
Right. Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Compaz. So this is the cast that I think you were referring to. If you want to know what the second generation of frames will support in the future, you should check this out. This frame fully supports fully native 3D rendering based on WASM technology in C++. This means that FC supports a very exciting revolution the developer community will bring. In this experiment, I use C++ and the Qt framework. Build mode is on debug with the least efficiency, only for test concept. We are still very early. And this is, I can't open it because it's only on mobile. And I am on desktop, but really interesting. I only understood half of that, but it sounds interesting.
Did you look at it on mobile though? Prof, did you open it on mobile?
No, I didn't. I need to go back and do that.
You don't have to do it the second, but
okay, I needed to go do it.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Right, and I think that goes back to the point is that there is basically nothing if you can build it as a web page, you can build it as a frame, and I think that's a much more powerful positioning for frames as a development platform.
Awesome.
And then Dan, just kind of technical question. So build it as a web page. It can now be as a frame. The additional things you get because you're on Farcaster is user context, wallet, crypto native functionality. Is that only though when it's opened within Warpcast or something that supports?
So Recaster implemented Frames v2,
but not on a web page. Like if I click through and it opens in a web page because there's
so there are a couple of things here. So one, someone could go build a Chrome extension. We're not in that business. Everyone hates Chrome extensions. So as much as I like Chrome extensions, I think we are not building a Chrome extension anytime soon. So you can imagine having a world where someone sends you a link that's a frame, and you have a Chrome extension, and it's able to just like pull in your Farcaster context and kind of like make that user experience. I think that there's another component of things where when you click through with a frame, and there's like different levels, like to get into the weeds of like how much you would trust the authentication. So today we say, hey, don't actually do anything sensitive. So if I click a frame, like you don't want to say, okay, that's Warpcast knows it's me. Like Warpcast can attest that. They have a signer, so it can like prove that. But the problem is that like think of like 5 different apps you might have added a signer to. If that one app gets compromised and there's something sensitive, so let's say you had like secret messages frame, and like you click on it and it knows it's me, and there's something sensitive in that secret message. You wouldn't want to do that, because if one of the apps that you've added a signer to, and none of this complexity should be exposed to the consumer, but like we're trying to think through it so people don't click on it. But the idea would be that then if they could take that signer, they could go hit the frame and they could like see your secret messages. So we kind of have to have this like lightweight to say, hey, if you don't have anything sensitive, but you want to give a personalized experience, like reasonable to trust it, right? Like, so when you click on a frame in Warpcast, they know it's you. But if it's like you want to show the authenticated, like, secret stuff, we can use something like Sign with Farcaster, which we're rebranding to Farcaster Connect over the next couple months, just to make it a little simpler for people, and then making that easy to use in any client, whether that's Recaster or Supercast and things like that.
Fantastic. Anything else on Frames v2 before we kind of move over to starter packs, Adrian or Dan? Anything else that we didn't cover? I will mention. Go ahead.
Well, I know Recaster has already implemented rendering for Frames v2. I don't know if other clients have. How difficult is it for clients to get updated to render and support the new frames?
I would ask, I can never say his name right, Howale.
Literally every time we bring him up, like we have to say the same thing. We say it 3 times.
We don't know.
Haole. So there you go. So please tell us how to say it, and then I will say it correctly from now on. But he was able. I don't even think he's full time on Recaster, which is amazing. I think he was just able to add it in a few days. Like under the hood, it's just opening up a web browser basically in the app, and you add some kind of helper stuff around it to just like make it more Farcaster native and crypto native and stuff like that, which any phone allows you to open up a browser within your app. It's called a web view. But so there's a bunch of stuff to go do to make it work well, but there's nothing stopping Woj if it's a priority for him to add frames to his app, I think, or to web and stuff like that. I think he's probably, if I was to guess, like waiting for it just to kind of settle out, right? It's like bleeding edge. He's got all these other priorities. And so once it's kind of like settled and it's like, okay, this seems like it's going to stick around for a while, we'll have some guide of like, here's how you'd implement it in the client. It's like, you need to do X, Y, and Z. Like, it takes some amount of time and you're good.
And there is a updated Farcaster doc site with Frames v2 for those who are building and want to learn more. There it is. Did you mention on the hub too, Adrian, that is it a framesv2.com now that's easier to access? Okay.
Yeah.
So you can go right there to dive into that. I do want to mention starter packs too, because this also launched last week. So this was your cast about this, new on Warpcast. Starter packs help friends quickly find their communities on Farcaster, curate up to 100 accounts in a pack, unlimited packs. Share the link and anyone can follow with a single tap. Sign up. We showed this really fun way to explore them. And then if you click into them, you will get a follow all button, or you can go in and individually follow the different folks, the different accounts in the starter packs. One of the first things I thought of was like, I really want channels as part of this too. And you mentioned that's coming down the road.
Yeah, I think the way to think about it is following a channel really doesn't do much for you at this point, because you follow the people, right? You get the cast based on the people, not the channel.
True.
And so I actually think that like following people is it's like the simpler thing. I know it sounds nice for channels, like in the sense of like, oh, we can include this stuff too, but it adds complexity to the feature. It's just yet another screen. You have to explain what a channel is to people. You're not necessarily a member. Like, so there's, if you kind of like work through that, I think that the simpler thing is, here's a bunch of, interesting people around this topic, which I think if you consistently ask people, why do they leave Farcaster? Two reasons. One, I have a bigger audience somewhere else. Well, you really can't solve that unless you grow the number of people. If that is not the case, the second question is there's just not enough content, which is fundamentally a problem of you're not following enough people. Because if you don't follow enough people, and you're not interacting, we don't know what you actually like. And so as a result, we're giving you more global recommendations, which let's say you're an artist and the only kind of crypto thing that you're kind of interested in is NFTs. Having your feed be a bunch of people talking about frames, like EIP, whatever. Yeah. Like if you're interested in Ethereum, that's great. But if you're not, then it's just like, this app isn't for me. Whereas if you get a starter pack and you're interested in Brazilian artists, the one you just showed, click follow, boom. Like now you feel like Farcaster is this, it's beyond just the channel. It's just like your feed feels like a Brazilian artist community. And so I think it's a very easy way for people to get booted up in terms of like, you can share this in a Discord, in a Telegram chat, on Twitter, and that community of people can kind of easily find themselves. I mean, Blue Sky came up with this concept. In retrospect, it's like super obvious. And Meta is implementing it with threads, and I wouldn't be surprised if Twitter, although Twitter is kind of at scale and they have lists, which is like kind of like this, but the reality is, which in retrospect is just obvious. The idea to just like follow everyone on a list, like click, because you can go to a list and see the people and then follow them, right?
Yeah.
So it's an iteration on lists in a way that is designed for a network that is trying to bootstrap.
Right.
And so I think like we probably should have done this earlier. Like I think we had concepts of this early on, but I think we approached it from a little bit of like lists are kind of this like crazy power user feature. Like very few people use lists on Twitter. So why would we go do this? When in reality, the essence of the list that's useful is curate a topic of people. I trust you as the curator. I click follow all, boom. Now my feed is injected with this topic effectively.
I'm going to make one plea for why I think channels included would be helpful. Like this is a list starter pack that I created, Farcaster Native Media, but a lot of the folks who are producing media, they're using channels, not a separate account for their media account. So for example, OK Banger has a channel, but not an account. So for context, it's helpful to have that included also. I just included it in the cast so that people understood why I was adding these folks, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But that to me would make this a little bit more inclusive. Like it would give you the full context of why these folks are included in this particular starter pack. So that's my only, thinking on that. But I can understand the complexity. It may not be worth it.
We'll add channels at some point, I'm sure. But I think in terms of just like figuring it out, and it's like, what I really want people to do. So if there's an announcement here to just kind of reiterate, is curate starter packs that map to the onboarding interests. And maybe I should just cast out what the current screen, because most people obviously don't go through onboarding again. But we have a set of, 10, 12 interests. And if you are making the best like crypto starter pack or, TV or, artists, the ones that get used the most, we are going to, over the next, call it month or two, map to the onboarding interests, so that when you select those interests, that's who gets populated in the select people. So,
so those are the categories that you had at the beginning about that you're tagging the starter
and if you sign up for TikTok or Instagram, they kind of do the same thing, where it's like, tell me what you're interested in, right? Because otherwise it's like, I'm just going to show you random stuff. And so those onboarding categories, and it's optional, you don't have to do it, but the idea is like, if you want to actually have some influence over that corner of Farcaster, then you're it's on you.
Your opportunity.
Start back and really try to promote it. It's think of it as like, you can grow your account on Farcaster, you can grow a channel on Farcaster, and maybe the lightest weight way is, I'm just really good at curating the best people to follow in a specific topic, and you really try to get those people to know. And we're going to add the ability to like get notified if you get out of the starter pack.
That'd be great.
But the point is that like having the go-to starter pack on Farcaster for a given topic is actually a really valuable thing, and you should accrue the benefit of that. There's status that comes from it, right?
Cool. Yeah. And I need to
an anti-status when you haven't been when you haven't been added to any starter packs.
It's not your worth, though. It's not your worth.
We developed a support group.
But here's the best one. You can create your own starter pack.
This is an opportunity.
People don't want to hear that, Dan. They don't want to hear that.
Opportunity for another starter pack. There you go.
It's an opportunity for another starter pack. Come on now. All right, we're going a little short on time. A couple more things.
Wait, but Dan, how do we get the list of topics? Is it Blockheim? Will they?
No, I'll just cast it out. I'll just cast it out, and then
not unless
you can also see the option. Like literally, when you go to create it, you can see the list.
Yeah, in the starter pack, you can tag it with one of the categories.
I'll cast it out today,
and
I'll tag you.
Okay.
So but that and I struggled with that a little bit of where to put this one, the Farcaster native media. I put it in news, but I'm like, not really, probably news, but I couldn't find a better tag for it. Okay, I do want to shift over to Clanker, the meme coins, the AI, and everything that's been happening. And I think this is a good cast to sort of level set here, because it's talking about Clanker and the FAR economy. And one of the hardest things about building when no one cares is trying to make enough noise that even a few people will try your product. When many people care, one of the hardest things for me has been blocking out the noise, staying focused on our vision and goals. We built Clanker to validate a thesis. Meme coins belong where people post memes. Agents make complicated stuff simple. We think pump clones will die and are building a different model. And then goes on to talk about that. But the bigger thing here was what that got me thinking from this cast was thinking about the Farcaster economy, or the FAR economy, and sort of what that's starting to develop into, and sort of the things that are happening and moving around within Farcaster. So for example, you launch a coin, maybe you make a little profit off that coin, then you go buy somebody's hyper sub like Samantha, and now you're supporting a candle making business, and then she goes and does something else, and then there's this whole economy that's just churning right now.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on sort of what's been happening with the AI bots and Clanker in particular, but just in general? And what are you excited about? What are you concerned about? Sort of where are you living in this particular moment?
Yeah, so three things. So the first is the point you make where if you have some Clanker coin, you make some money on it, and now you're subscribing to a hyper sub. That is actually the kind of like underrated thing about Farcaster, and the velocity of money in the ecosystem relative to the size, so the GDP per capita,
right,
it's quite high. And so I think leaning into that as like a differentiating just overall strategy of Farcaster is a place you can come on. It's a social network. that there are interesting people on. You can make friends at Farcaster, and you can also earn some money just like by using it. That in of itself, I think, can be a valuable value prop. I think it needs to be refined and simplified. And no one wants to feel like they're only, well, some people, but no one wants to feel like it's like I'm using the network to make money. But if it's part of kind of an overall set of things that you're just doing by being there, that feels great. And to the degree that you're supporting, you're taking kind of a meme coin to translate into supporting an entrepreneur like Samantha or someone else on the network, like that actually feels pretty good.
Yeah.
I think that the second thing with, kind of like everything happening with Clanker and the AI agents, the positive here, and this is the way we win, and I also brought this up recently, is Farcaster is the best programmable social network. And we have all these Legos, and we've talked about this, but the idea that you're able to spin up an agent, right? This is the kind of current meta AI agent on Farcaster, and have that up and running immediately. You're not going to get kind of rate limited on the API. You're not going to get banned. Like, I think there was a bot by a few people.
Twitter.
Meme coin. They got from what the whole point is that Twitter is increasingly less programmable, and Farcaster is as programmable as it gets, right? And so I think that having that kind of be the leading edge of what's happening on Farcaster and having that tightly coupled to what's happening on chain, I think is a very good trend for us to be leaning into. And I think Frames V2 and kind of better wallet support on mobile, like those are all part of an overall strategy to just index Farcaster to whatever people are doing on chain. The flip side of that, and the thing that we have to balance, is naturally when people start to get very into a given meta, it can feel like it's dominating the feed. And if you're not into that feels bad, right? It's like, oh, I'm not into meme coins. Like what happened to the social network that I like showing up to every day, where people are talking about substantial conversations or whatever claim that they were making about before. And so I think we have to balance is, one, if you aren't interested, give people tools to kind of opt out. So we have like muted keywords. We've improved that. We have the ability to mute users and unfollow people now. The algo feed is actually pretty good. Is if you just don't engage with people on a certain thing, it will actually naturally just show you fewer of those types of casts. But I think that there are other areas we can improve there. And
you added a following feed as well, so that just got added recently. So you can just skip.
Let me just be super clear. Yeah. Following feed does not get a lot of usage in the scheme of things. So everyone who thinks that they know product around following feeds or whatever, like surprise, like people still use the algo feed. Like that's what modern social networks work. But we wanted to add the following feed in a world where we're already adding the tabs back for channels as an option for people to take more control over their experience with the podcast. Obviously, you can do this on Supercast and Recaster and all these other clients for a while. But to the degree that you are using Webcast, there are now tools for you to kind of like better manage your feed experience. But I think that it's just about not over rotating, right? It's like you don't want to be fully, trading based app, because then you actually lose a lot of the kind of richness of the social network that's developed over the last 4 years. But at the same time, if you're, it's funny, we get accused of being an ivory tower, and the reality is like, I don't actually like Farcaster is just a subset of crypto Twitter. It's not like some exclusive highbrow intellectual thing, despite the Christian rap associations. But if you tack too far away, and it's like you suppress all of that, which frankly Twitter does a bunch of that. Like in terms of like you put a cash tag, like a token symbol in Twitter, your distribution's going to be wiped because so many spam bots do that. Right. And I think our model is a lot more sophisticated. It's like, no, like we know there are good users and there are spammy users, and the spammy users probably won't see their stuff. You're not following them. And then important is if you're following someone on Farcaster and they're talking about, whatever token, like you should see that. You've opted into seeing that, and then give people the tools to kind of like manage their own experience. And so that's the way I think about it, is like we have to be indexed to what's happening in crypto, because that's our only differentiating. After 4 years, like increasingly convinced, the only thing that is going to make Farcaster win is if we are the best social network for people interested in crypto. And as crypto grows, you're going to have more and more people come in for different adjacencies and stuff like that.
I agree. Yeah, that's what we're banking on as well. I know you have a hard stop and you have to run. Is there anything else that you wanted to sort of share, announce, anything that we missed that you wanted to hit on?
Frames V2, like
Frames
go
V2.
try Frames on mobile, give feedback, share with your friends.
We'll be incorporating a lot of those frames into Cast Out too, which will be happening next week. So it'll be fun.
Cheers.
It's been great having you here.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And yeah, we'll do a quick wrap up. Thanks, Dan. That was awesome. Too fast, too quick. I had a zillion other questions that we didn't get to. Kyle, the ticker is frames v2. Let's see how long it takes from this to the actual token getting launched. I give it,
and the token exists. And I think there was a market on whether Dan would say there's not enough interesting content. Gotcha. And I'm unfortunately, I think Meta David might have been on the other side of that bet.
Shoot. Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Meta David. You might have missed that. Yeah, we talked to him a little bit briefly about Thread Guy before we went live. And his experience there, and he really liked that experience. But we didn't get a chance. I wanted to ask about Dev Day and FarCon, but we'll talk about that another time. Yeah, that was really great to hear from the horse's mouth. I'm excited to see what else people build with V2. It seems like there's so much possibility there, and that watching the hub this morning too, and Dylan talk about it got me a little more excited as well. So if you're a dev, by the way, the recording for the hub is currently available. You can find it on YouTube, you can find it on Twitter, and it'll be everywhere else shortly. And that dives into a little bit more on the technical side, but also check out framesv2.com.
Yeah. And
sorry,
also,
what you were saying?
There's a GitHub discussion, which was like the FIP discussing Frames V2.
Right.
So even though Frames V2 is out, it's worth it to go read, because you'll get a lot of the context about how and why the problem it was solving. And kind of you get to see the discussions that the developers had in the comments. So I was reading that. I thought I was reading it last night, so it's like not too late. So we'll bookmark that as well.
Awesome.
And
we can add that to the notes for this as well. And if you missed the very beginning, no Farcaster token. Why? Because what would the token do? So once again,
the IPO analogy is great.
Yeah, that is great. That way. Yeah. That was super helpful. So thank you. Thank you, Meta David. Appreciate that. Thank you, Lamb Chop. Thank you, everybody who's been hanging out in the chat. Appreciate you all. And anything else, Adrian, before we wrap? One thing I do want to point out really quick is we do have Cast Out starting next week. I believe Alpha Friends is going to go right here in this bottom corner. I got to get that in there. We just chatted with them yesterday, and Sparks has a little team going, so they're going to be hard to beat. Purple also has a team. Thank you, Purple. Thank you, DGen.
Were you surprised Dan didn't know what Cast Out is?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, I don't know. He just missed it in June. It must have been when he was vacationing. I don't know.
No, he's not. But it's a great, great reminder, I think, for everyone on social, which is like, you are not the main character in other people's lives.
Yeah.
Dan may follow you. He may like your cast. He's not reading everything you put out. Or even if he does, like, you're not breaking through. So he didn't know what Cast Out was. So now he does.
Yeah. And now he does.
I'm sorry we didn't get to ask Dan about his hair care routine.
Damn.
Or his skincare routine. But that because
we missed that.
Yeah.
We'll add that to next time.
We're no longer inviting guests on that have better hair or skin than us. Sorry. I don't like that.
He did. Yeah, he looked great. I was like, I look pasty. I got to figure out my lighting. I do want to shout out.
That's my shampoo. Sorry.
I do want to shout out the rest of our schedule this week. We will be back tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. for our regular GM Farcaster. So much happening. So there's just a lot to talk about. On Friday at 8:30 a.m., we will be with Matt at MATS from Dune, one of the co-founders of Dune. And that's going to be a really interesting conversation. So if you have questions for the Dune co-founder, please drop them to us. And then Farcaster Fridays, URL edition at 6 p.m. on Friday with Adrian and Samantha. And I'm going to be popping in and out because I will be in Miami for our Basel. But Samantha is going to be creating candles live with us and chatting about what she's up to for this holiday season. So a lot of fun happening this week. This was a great chat with Dan. Really appreciate him swinging by to chat about frames and starter packs and all the fun. You know what? That is a good point. I will let them know that. I would as well. So anything else, Adrian, before we wrap this today? This has been a lot of fun.
No, that was super fun. We'll get all the recordings out later. And if you are just catching GM Farcaster for the first time,
welcome.
And you're watching, welcome. Come on over to Farcaster. It's really fun and programmable. And
we're doing a lot of fun things.
Thanks for hanging out.
A lot of fun things happening over there. Come on, come hang with us. Yeah, we're happy to have you, and we'll give you a starter pack to get you going.
Build frames. And by the way, if you're not a developer, you could probably still build it because ChatGPT exists and it will tell you how. No excuses.
And Nanar Frame Studio exists, and it's very helpful. So there you go.
We love you, Lamb Chop.
Yeah, we love you, Lamb Chop. Love all the chat. Thank you, chat, for being with us today. And we will see you again tomorrow morning. And with that, we bid you bye-bye.